What forced the U.S. military, with firepower capable of leveling entire areas, to accept combat inside narrow tunnel systems they could not control in Vietnam? The answer lies in how the Vietnamese side organized and sustained the war. The tunnel systems in Vietnam were the result of a strategy designed to avoid direct confrontation with superior American firepower. They were not built to defend individual battles, but to maintain long-term presence inside areas the U.S. military controlled on the surface. Underground, there were not only combat teams, there were weapons caches, medical stations, communication lines, shelters, and command points, all supporting the operations of the Viet Cong and units of the North Vietnamese Army. This system allowed Vietnamese forces to engage, withdraw underground, recover, and re-emerge in the same location. For the U.S. military, this was a doctrinal problem. Bombs and artillery could destroy sections of tunnels, but could not confirm that the entire network had been neutralized. Surface control did not stop activity below ground. When there was no way to control or end the underground space from the outside, the only remaining solution was to send infantry directly into the tunnels to inspect, gather intelligence, and disrupt the system's ability to function. Tunnel rats emerged from this exact necessity. To enter a space like this, with no visibility, no formation, and no supporting fire, what did the soldier sent underground have to carry, and why did every single item in that loadout have to exist? Item 1, pistol, M1911 A1, or 38 caliber revolver. When U.S. infantry entered tunnel systems in Vietnam, combat took place in tight, dark, twisting spaces where most contacts happened at extreme close range. In these conditions, long weapons could not be raised or turned in time when an enemy appeared suddenly around a corner or inside a low tunnel section. The soldier sent underground could carry only one personal weapon, and that weapon had to function while crawling, while prone, or while pressed against tunnel walls. This requirement eliminated most standard infantry weapon configurations. In practice, tunnel rats carried either the M1911A1 or a 38 caliber revolver. These choices were not meant to increase firepower, but to ensure the same function under different conditions, stopping power sufficient to end a contact at point-blank range without attempting to replace or dominate with firepower. The 38 revolver was often favored for its reliability when fired from poor positions or when clearing malfunctions was impossible. Inside tunnels, the pistol was simply a weapon to fire when contact occurred at distances of only a few dozen centimeters, where there was no time and no space for any other option. The loadout did not require multiple firearms. It required one firearm that would work in the shortest possible moment. Item 2, flashlight. Inside tunnels, natural light was almost non-existent. The soldier had to move, orient himself, and detect the enemy in an environment where human vision could not adapt. Without light, all movement became blind guessing. The flashlight was carried to illuminate the space directly ahead. In short, controlled moments, the light was not used to see far ahead, but to see the immediate tunnel section, corners, simple traps, and the shape of the space itself. In tunnels, not seeing meant being unable to continue safely. Item 3, combat knife. In confined spaces, not every contact could be handled with a firearm. Some situations required silence or direct interaction with suspicious objects at extremely close range without creating loud noise. The combat knife was carried for silent close combat and for direct manipulation of the environment. The knife allowed the soldier to cut, push aside, or deal with small obstacles without firing a weapon inside an enclosed space. Item 4, bayonet. Tunnel systems often contain simple traps placed close to the ground or along tunnel walls. Touching these areas directly carried high risk. The bayonet was used as a probing tool, allowing the soldier to test soil, tunnel walls, or suspicious points from a safer distance. Inside tunnels, the bayonet was not just a weapon, but a tool that extended human reach. Item 5, C4 explosive. After a tunnel was discovered and searched, the problem was no longer combat, but preventing the enemy from using the space again. Simply leaving did not ensure the tunnel system had been neutralized. C4 was carried to destroy key tunnel sections, storage areas, or critical junctions in a controlled manner after inspection was complete. Explosives were not used during penetration, but to terminate a space once it had been exposed. Item 6, sawed-off shotgun. Not all tunnel sections were narrow. Some entrances or widened areas created open spaces where contact could occur immediately upon entry. The sawed-off shotgun was used in these situations to deliver instant firepower at extremely close range at dangerous transition points, especially tunnel entrances. It was not a weapon for deep tunnel movement, but a rapid response tool for high-risk entry zones. Item 7, rope. Tunnel systems were complex, multi-branched, and disorienting. As depth increased, returning by the same route was no longer guaranteed. Marking line was used to record movement paths and identify withdrawal routes. It allowed the soldier to retrace his path without relying entirely on memory in a low-light environment with no natural reference points. Item 8, jungle fatigue uniform. Constant crawling, sliding, and turning in tight spaces created heavy friction and wear. Heavy or bulky clothing quickly became an obstacle. Jungle fatigues were used because they were light, flexible, and less likely to snag during tunnel movement. They were not intended to maximize protection, but to allow sustained mobility over extended periods. Item 9, jungle boots. Before and after entering tunnels, the soldier still had to move through jungle terrain, mud, and wet ground. Inadequate footwear could degrade mobility before reaching the tunnel system. Jungle boots were carried to ensure surface mobility and safe access to tunnel areas. In many cases, boots were removed or adjusted before deep penetration. Item 10, headgear. Steel helmets or Boonie hats were unsuitable for the low, confined spaces of tunnel systems. Wearing headgear underground restricted head movement and easily caught on tunnel ceilings. Headgear was typically left outside tunnel entrances and used only during surface operations. This item existed to protect the soldier above ground, not during tunnel penetration. Item 11, web gear. Load-bearing equipment with multiple pouches and straps easily snagged in confined spaces. Every snag point could slow movement or completely lock the body in place. Web gear was minimized or left behind before entering tunnels with only essential components retained. This reduction aimed to lower the risk of entanglement and unwanted noise. Item 12, gloves. Tunnel surfaces contained rough earth, rock, and debris that could injure hands while crawling or bracing. However, gloves also reduced tactile feedback. Gloves were used depending on conditions when hand protection was needed in rough sections or when handling objects. Wearing or not wearing gloves was a personal decision based on immediate conditions. Item 13, gas mask. CS gas, smoke, or choking agents could be used near tunnel entrances or shallow sections. However, wearing a gas mask in confined spaces restricted vision and hearing. Gas masks were typically issued and used when dealing with exterior areas or shallow sections, but were rarely worn during deep tunnel penetration. This was a contingency item, not a primary infiltration tool. Item 14, compass. Inside complex tunnel systems, determining overall direction was nearly impossible by feel alone. Losing orientation could prevent a soldier from finding an exit. The compass was used to record movement direction and support tunnel mapping after the mission was complete. It was a navigation aid, not a step-by-step guide inside the tunnel. Tunnel rats were not organized to dominate. They were organized to survive in a space where most infantry doctrine no longer applied. Every choice in this loadout did not represent optimization. It represented very specific limits of the tunnel environment. Confined space, zero visibility, extreme close range contact, and the inability to rely on firepower or formations behind them. No single item solved the problem on its own, but placed together, they allowed a small unit to enter, inspect, and withdraw from a system of warfare built entirely underground. This is not a story about special equipment. It is a story about how a unit was forced to adjust everything it carried just to continue the mission under the worst possible conditions. And that is the complete loadout of the Tunnel Rats.